Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about the quick way. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, if you want to add the ability to code to your CV/resume with no prior experience, what's the most effective or quickest way to do that and gain employment? Take a say year-long, close to a year-long ish boot camp in JavaScript development or like front-end development. It depends on how you want to sort of call it, and that should pretty much be it, I would say. Most of the the average time, as I've told you a few times, that it takes you to become get your first job or become a professional grade software developer is between 1 to 5 years. That's the range-ish where companies are comfortable hiring people. And so if you take there is a fairly high demand for front-end developers, and usually, at least in my experience, the level of quality of those of the front-end developers and sort of what they go through in order to get a job, it varies a little bit because it depends on the company as well. Some companies have very strict policies, and quite a lot of them don't really have any higher policy than, do you know the tools that they are using, and can you produce a UI that looks right. Code quality and the more theoretical concepts that might take some time and more diligent study in some cases, depending on how you look at it, of course, is less of a factor for the front-end developers. And so it's usually easier, at least in my experience, to get a front-end position than it is to get one of the other positions. As I said, it depends a lot on things, but that is what I've seen. And the average quality in terms of knowledge for front-end developers is lower, as I would say. It's it's the short version, basically. It's easier, in my opinion. And I've worked as both front. Technically, well, I would like to refer to myself as a real full stack developer, because usually when people throw around full stack developer, which I think is a fair criticism from the people who do Java and C Sharp, or it doesn't have to be these languages. You sort of understand the backend developers who actually do this full time will say that, well, a full stack JavaScript developer, well, just because you can make as I've said before, guys, just because you can set up a basic server doesn't necessarily mean you know how to model your domain, create architecture for backend systems, or work in a distributed ecosystem of different services, etc., etc. Getting a server up is a little bit the basics, but I've done both. I've worked as a full-time backend developer, full-time front-end developer, and everything in between, and I will say that the emphasis on theoretical knowledge is a lot lower usually in front end. But with that said, that doesn't mean that front end is easy. It's extremely difficult in terms of doing it well and so forth. But at the same time, the industry's understanding of what is required in order to have a sustainable front end code base is fairly poor at this point, I would say. And so for people who are getting into the industry, I would say that there's quite a lot more, from my perspective at the very least, bootcamp level front-end developers are getting into the industry than you'll see with the more heavier back-end languages and so forth. But that's just my personal observation. So what I want you to take away from this is very simple. If you don't have any prior work experience whatsoever working in software development, and you don't really care so much about, if you do back-end work, front-end work, or so forth, it's probably easy for you to take about a year-ish boot camp in front-end development. And as I've said before as well, it's good for you to focus on the stack that is most relevant for your region. And then you can start going on the job hunt. Usually you can find that it can be a little bit difficult to get the first jobs, not always, but you can wager that it will take you about 1 to 5 years before you're sort of stable in terms of job prospects within the industry. But I will sort of stick my neck out and but just sort of say that, and I've actually said that in a really old video, that I perceive front end as being an easier path into the IT industry today than for, say, backend and so forth. Mostly because the emphasis on theoretical knowledge, like computer science concepts or so forth, is a bit lower, and there's a lot more old-timer, senior level, etc., opinionated, etc., engineering managers, hiring managers, tech leads, etc., in the backend space than there are in front end. Today, like the front end developers, like the so-called senior front end developers, are basically, I mean, to me, it's sort of a joke, honestly, because usually the focus for the front end developer is literally learn the stack that you work with. That's it. There is there's nothing more than that, and that's actually what the junior level software developer learns pretty much in one of these boot camps. So even though you might not be able to produce as quickly or as efficiently as someone who's very, very senior, the requirement on you isn't much higher than that in many cases. It varies a bit from company to company, but I would say that on average, if you're completely fresh and you just want to get into the industry quickly, this would be the way to do that, I would say, as long as you want to do software development. There are roles like QA or things like that might be quote unquote simpler if you want to go with that terminology. But for software developers, I would say that front-end is a quicker path for many than I would say that back-end development would be. Have a great day.